Chrysler killed this name once. They are about to find out that was a mistake. For decades, the letter series was the closest thing Detroit ever had to a royal bloodline. And when the badge disappeared from showrooms, something in American luxury quietly went with it. I'm here today with Premium Car Reviews, and we spend our time trying to understand what a car actually means once the marketing language is stripped away. Because a name like this one carries weight that a spec sheet can never fully explain. What you're not expecting is the decision buried deep in this car's drivetrain architecture. A choice that has nothing to do with horsepower and everything to do with how Chrysler defines what a flagship is even allowed to be in 2027. And we'll get to exactly why that decision is going to divide people the moment it becomes public. Stand in front of this thing, and the first sensation is not speed. It's presence. The proportions are long and low in a way that modern sedans have mostly abandoned. A hood that stretches with real intent before the cabin even begins, communicating that whatever lives underneath deserves the room to breathe. The vertical grille is the loudest single design statement Chrysler has made in a generation. Tall chrome slats catching light like the front of something built to be remembered rather than merely purchased, and it deliberately echoes the formal, imposing face that made the original letter cars feel like moving architecture. The headlights cut a thin, surgical line beneath that grille, LED signatures that read as calm intelligence rather than aggression. Because this car isn't trying to look angry, it's trying to look certain. Wide haunches over the rear wheels root the car to the pavement visually before it's moved an inch, and the fastback roofline drops toward a deck lid with just enough tension to suggest athleticism without abandoning the sedan's formal dignity. Every line here is doing a job. Nothing is decoration. That's the difference between styling and design, and this car understands the difference intimately. Open the door, and the outside world goes quiet before the door has even fully closed. A hush that tells you this cabin was engineered as much for silence as for style. The seating position drops you low and secure, more grand tourer than traditional American sedan, with bolstering that holds you through corners you didn't expect a car this size to take seriously. The steering wheel is trimmed in leather, so dense it feels almost cool to the touch initially, thick in the hands, deliberately free of the button clutter that has crept into so many modern interiors. Genuine open-pore wood runs across the dash, contrasted against brushed metal that catches ambient light rather than reflecting it harshly. And there's a faint scent of leather and something like cedar that seems to have been chosen, rather than simply left behind by the factory. Ambient lighting traces the door panels in a warm amber that shifts gently with the drive mode selected. Never garish, always intentional. The center display is angled toward the driver rather than standing upright as a tablet bolted to the dash, integrated into the architecture of the console instead of interrupting it. Sitting still in this cabin, engine off, you already understand that somebody obsessed over details most owners will never consciously notice. And that obsession is exactly what separates true craftsmanship from expensive furniture. Then you press the start button, and the cabin answers with a low mechanical breath before ignition. A fraction of a second where you can almost feel the twin turbocharged V8 gathering itself. It settles into an idle that is deep without being intrusive, a steady, confident murmur that vibrates faintly through the seat rather than the ears. Roll into the throttle, and the exhaust note builds progressively rather than exploding. A baritone that thickens as revs climb, hybrid-assisted torque filling in instantly beneath the internal combustion power, so there's no hesitation, no gap, just continuous and effortless shove. Chrysler is targeting somewhere around 670 horsepower and close to 650 pound-feet of torque from this engineering. Numbers that feel less like a boast and more like a quiet confirmation of what the car already communicates through the seat of your pants. The 8-speed automatic shifts with barely perceptible acoustic punctuation, a soft mechanical click rather than a violent bang, because this car was never designed to feel angry when it changes gears. Push it hard and the sound sharpens at the top of the rev range into something genuinely emotional, layered and urgent in a way that surprises you given how composed the cabin felt moments earlier. And then you lift and the exhaust falls back into that same low baritone hush, the isolation returning almost instantly. as if the car is embarrassed to have raised its voice. The first few miles behind the wheel tell you everything about the philosophy at work here. Steering weight builds naturally off-center. Communicative without transmitting every imperfection in the road surface, striking a balance that feels deliberately old-world in the best sense. Brake pedal feedback is firm and linear from the very top of travel. None of the artificial sponginess that plagues so many modern hybrid-assisted systems. The adaptive suspension reads the road ahead and adjusts before you've even registered the bump was coming, keeping the body flat through direction changes while still allowing enough compliance that long highway stretches feel genuinely restful rather than fatiguing. Chassis balance leans toward composed grand touring rather than outright aggression, front and rear working together rather than the rear simply following orders. And the seats hold you through faster corners without ever making you feel like you're fighting the car to stay comfortable. There's real road texture communicated through the wheel, enough that you trust the surface beneath you, but never so much that a 6-hour drive becomes punishing. This is a car engineered for the person who wants to arrive somewhere meaningful, not just quickly. Underneath the comfort sits real intelligence. Driver assistance systems here are calibrated to support rather than intrude. Adaptive cruise and lane centering that feel like a steady second set of hands rather than a nervous backseat driver. And over-the-air updates mean the car Chrysler ships in year one keeps quietly improving well into ownership. None of it announces itself loudly. It simply makes the long drive easier and the mundane errands less draining. Technology treated as a companion rather than a spectacle. Chrysler is positioning this flagship somewhere in the neighborhood of $85,000 to $95,000, depending on trim and options. A number that initially seems steep for a Chrysler badge until you remember exactly what you're paying for. You're not simply buying horsepower here. You're buying the emotional continuation of a nameplate that once genuinely competed with the world's finest sedans and then vanished from the conversation for years. And you're buying craftsmanship that, mile after mile, argues convincingly that it belongs back in that conversation. Is it worth it? For someone who understands the historical weight of that badge, absolutely. For someone shopping purely on spreadsheet value, this was never going to be the car for them anyway. This is not a segment disruptor chasing a new category, and it isn't chasing German rivals spec for spec either. This is a legacy revival, a deliberate resurrection of American formal luxury, built for people who remember what that phrase used to mean before it got diluted into crossover trim levels. It has no true direct competitor, because nobody else is trying to say what this car is saying. The person this car was built for isn't chasing a badge for status. They understand engineering as craft. They remember what it felt like when American luxury meant something internationally, and they want a car that rewards patience on a long drive rather than demanding constant attention. They care less about outrunning a stoplight and more about arriving at a coastal overlook at sunset, having genuinely enjoyed every mile that got them there. It isn't flawless, and Chrysler deserves credit for not pretending otherwise. The trunk is generous, but the rear doors, styled with that dramatic fastback roofline, sacrifice a touch of rear headroom compared to boxier full-size rivals, a compromise made knowingly in favor of the silhouette. It's a small price for a car this visually confident, but it's real, and pretending otherwise would insult the people actually cross-shopping this thing. There's a version of this car's life that plays out on a long American coastal highway at golden hour. Ocean on one side, palm trees flickering past on the other. Engine settled into that low baritone hum while the miles disappear beneath white-walled pavement. That's where this thing feels spiritually correct, not on a racetrack chasing a lap time nobody asked for. Before we get to how this all wraps up, I want to know where you land on something genuinely debatable. Should a modern American flagship chase outright performance numbers to compete internationally, or should it protect the smooth, effortless refinement that originally made cars like this legendary in the first place? Make your case in the comments, and if stories like this one matter to you, stick around and subscribe to Premium Car Reviews, because we're only getting started with what comes next. This is a car built by people who refuse to let a great American name stay dead.